Tak ja verím, že toto bude dostatočne zábavné, tak skúsime teda bez vtipu, aby sme nezdržovali. Ďakujem pekne, ďakujem, že tu ste. Teší ma, že môžem rozprávať. A mám to v angličtine, ešte tak sa rýchlo spýtam. Po anglicky alebo po slovensky? Ako chceme, dobre. Tak v tom prípade pôjdeme po anglicky, pretože to mi bude asi trošku komfortnejšie aj vzhľadom na tú terminológiu. So, hi everybody, I'm Miro, and today I'll be talking about how you should revive the biotech ecosystem in Slovakia. And now, as you might kind of see, and as you will see, I'm also a CEO of a startup, and therefore we need to be time efficient. So first 30 seconds, I'm actually going to tell you everything you need to know if you needed to leave early, right? So I'm offering you that opportunity. So today we're going to talk about biotech, Slovak and global. So why the biotech industry matters now and in the future, what are the key pain points of the Slovak biotech industry, and which steps our country should take to improve the Slovak biotech ecosystem. And that would be, well, basically the biology is the key platform of the 21st century. The global biotech industry is moving at unprecedented speed, and we need to catch up with that. And the key aspects of mature biotech ecosystem are strong academia, strong translational R&D, innovative companies, infrastructure, public engagement, and industry. And we need to improve pretty much all of that in Slovakia should we build a sustainable biotech ecosystem over the next 10 years. But first, a bit about me, like, why am I here and talking to you about this? So I'm a CEO and co-founder of Sensible Biotechnologies, which is an early-stage startup where we are kind of programming cells to produce mRNA faster, cheaper, with improved properties, so we can essentially unlock its full therapeutic potential. We have funding from some great and the world's top Silicon Valley investors like Y Combinator, Civilization Ventures, and some other investors. So I'm also a PhD candidate in engineering at Oxford, where I'm mathematically modeling living cells, and then I'm running some simulations on them, trying to optimize their properties. And I'm a co-managing director of Nucleate UK, which is world's largest non-profit, equity-free, student-led organizations. We're just, out of the goodness of our heart, helping other students build the biotech enterprises all over the globe. And I work with a couple of life science investment funds, and I also run my small consultancy called MAG Consulting. So let's get to it. So hopefully I believe that I have somehow shown that I'm qualified to talk about some of these topics. So the 21st century is the century of biology. It is the platform of the century. So in 19th century, pretty much everything was about the machines. In 20th century, we kind of moved, and really computers became the thing that started to be a platform for everything. And in 21st century, it is now biology. We can read DNA, we can write DNA, we can amend it, we can write RNA, and all these different things. And therefore now it's all the biological systems, mostly bacteria and yeast. Like, there are some people who would tell you it's our bodies, but I'm not that far. I'm proper engineer. I'm really skeptical about all of that. So, but the biology undeniably is the platform of the century. And so why? So the challenges we are facing as the humanity now can be solved by biology. The climate change, pandemics and diseases, aging, lack of resources, all of that can be resolved by one form or another of manipulation of biological systems. And truly, a lot of companies are working on that. So LanzaTag is taking CO from the air and turning it into useful chemicals. Hoxton Farms are making kind of artificial fat for artificial meat so that it's actually tasty and affordable. Companies like Altos Labs and Rejuvenation Technologies are trying to help cure the aging, because aging, in fact, is a disease that pretty much most of us are going to die of, and unfortunately we don't think about it like in that way, but that's a big problem. And then we've got diseases that, as I mentioned, where we need new gene therapies, like from Blue Bio, and pandemics, where Moderna and BioNTech brought us a lot of new solutions. And then lack of resources, where we really mean a lack of ability to make things cheaply and affordably for everybody and in a sustainable way. And other companies are like Ginkgo are heading the way there. So really the biotech industry is really growing over the last 20 years, we could say, especially because really the enabling technologies have happened. And you could see that the amount of money invested in the biotech is really growing. And the money are put in a good use. We've got a more of new drugs. At least more candidates are coming. Whether regulators approve them, that's another question, or if payers will pay for them, that's yet another question. But there's a much more money coming into the industry. And overall, we can think about this from a lot of different impacts, but usually economics is easy to count. So we could say that applications of bioengineering could have a direct economic impact of up to $4 trillion a year over the next 20 years, according to some analysis. And I totally believe that, because just if you think about it, how we today make all these like plastics, how we today make the cotton from your shirt, that's often kind of quite unsustainable. We could make it much more cheaply in a much more scalable way if we say use cells to make all of these things. So anyways, and there is a lot of, I already mentioned a lot of companies in the countries, mostly in the US and the UK, let's be honest, apart from biotech, which kind of started in Germany, but that's really much an exception. But it's important to know that a lot of kind of cool biotech companies are growing in Central European countries. Saltio in Czech Republic, it's quite a big company already. Solaris in Austria, a company I was actually looking at investing into. Molecule One in Poland, Cominex in Hungary, Archeon in Austria, and Juicy Marbles in Slovenia. Like all these companies are growing in the neighboring countries, and they're getting a lot of attracting a lot of smart, we could call it a smart capital, a lot of external financing that then locally drives the economics, provides jobs, and helps people to do good and useful things with biology. And global biotech hubs really do bring a massive economic benefit. So from some of the smaller ones like, Oxford or Geneva to really the mecca of biotech, which is Boston, we can just see incredible amount of economic impacts, from tens of thousands of jobs to billions of dollars generated in revenue. So, and we could think about it so how come that there is a pretty cool biotech ecosystem in Boston, apart from that being a beautiful New England city with a lot of old brick buildings, and not in Kiev or Košice or Baku in Azerbaijan. Well, these kind of major biotech ecosystems, as we think about it, require a couple of important features, from great universities, so higher education, which actually are working on a translational research and teaching in a multidisciplinary fashion. Translational R&D, where people are really kind of problem-driven. People are real engineers, essentially are thinking, hey, what is a real-world problem I can solve? Through startups or any kind of companies that are aggressively aiming to grow, sufficient infrastructure, engagement with the public sector, and actually major biotech industry, which includes both large companies and actually investors. And so where is Slovak biotech? I mean, don't get me wrong, there are companies working in biotech in Slovakia, but and we have some indications, right? It's not absolutely horrible, but we still need to do a lot more work. So we've got universities, we have some kind of R&D, Academy of Science, which is quite an old concept, but okay. We have some startups, including mine. So I'm not alibist. My startup is between Oxford and Slovakia, but we have a lab in Slovakia. So we're really and we're actually drawing the talent from all over the world to Slovakia, not otherwise. So I have full right to criticize all of that. And then we have some infrastructure. Actually, we don't have much infrastructure. If you're a new incoming company and want a lab anywhere in Slovakia, good luck with that. And there is some public sector engagement. Somebody sometimes writes some kind of a report, and there are these innovation agencies. And there is also biotechnology industry that produces something. I think that the total revenue at the moment is 300 million, which is not really great. So let's not lie to ourselves. And I think I'll get to it. One of the biggest problems when thinking about a biotech industry in Slovakia, for example, is we are kidding ourselves, right? We are lying to ourselves. We are selecting banned benchmarks. We are kind of saying, yeah, but we are better than Antarctica. Yeah, nobody cares. Why don't you compare to Oxford or Boston or Geneva? That's what we should be doing. And then if you start looking at higher education, you suddenly realize that there's quite a lack of interdisciplinary education. I'd love to hire all the computational biologists or bioengineers who also understand financial accounting. don't find much of them here. Really bad culture. We might have talked about it before. And, a lot of missing industry collaborations, industry-sponsored PhDs and all of that. We just don't finance our R&D enough. We are not pushing enough money, even into fundamental research. It's absolutely, pretty bad. And even like all of that is like super bureaucratic, and people are kind of literally fighting for just the pennies, for super small money. And we are not supporting the top researchers enough, right? Like that's a big problem, and we'll get to it. So we don't have like global biotech startups. That's also important, right? So when we say like we don't have startups, that would be kind of like BioNTech. You say BioNTech, everybody knows, oh, Germany, that's cool. Like that's a big German company. We don't have big companies on a global scale. And we could be more modest. We could just say like startup that raises, say, 10 million in a private financing, not a public financing. That's another like super big problem of Europe as a whole. We are too kind of socialist in this sense, and we are still thinking that the states should pay for all these things. It should be a private sector, really. And we don't have like, we are too focused on the state support, right? And I mentioned we have pretty much no infrastructure. Again, if you're a super smart PhD student and want to work on your company somewhere, or want to take a bunch of buddies and work with them, it would be quite difficult. And, public sector engagement, we could say much more about it, but I can just say that there's like almost zero understanding in the key stakeholders, like what this is, like what are the metrics, what are the key people, how should we think about this? And there is a lot of lack of kind of drivers and lack of collaborations. And then we read all these articles like Slovakia is super beautiful, unique, like small, beautiful flower and rose, how all smart, innovative people are just in the state support, which is not true. We are not special. We're actually, we're really doing really bad. But, when we're doing bad, hopefully we can improve. So, and then there is something, if you start, like what are some of the consequences, is that, weak life science industry really costs lives. And that's from, not having infrastructure and not having supplies of vaccines or like face masks during the pandemics or new drugs, but not even a clinical trials, right? Like we are per capita, like a number of clinical trials per person in Slovakia is pretty bad, right down there between Bulgaria and Poland. But like Poland is quite a bigger country, but they need to improve as well, doing a pretty bad job. So, we are struggling a big time in Slovak biotech, and people are trying, right? Like this is just trying to be a constructive critic. We are not doing great, but it's fine. But the big problem is that many stakeholders have no idea that we actually are struggling, or they don't care, right? So if you look at reasons to invest in health and life sciences sector in Slovakia, I just took this from some report. Like strong R&D focus on a life science sector, I disagree. It's not true. Constantly evolving research and academic infrastructure, I disagree. It's pretty bad. Significant achievements, not true. Like where are all those Nature papers, right? Local pharmaceutical sector, strong. Like how come? Like how do you evaluate that? Qualified and cost-effective workforce with high education level, partially true. Workforce here is super cheap compared to like the Western countries, and a lot of it is very qualified. But if you're a biotech startup and you want to find some more niche people, I can guarantee you there's exactly 0 people. I would like hire immediately, triple their salary. I wouldn't care. I just want the talent. I just can't get it here. There is like exactly nobody. So political and economic stability, you guess. And euro currency, okay, that's true. Flat income tax rate, I don't even know if that is true anymore. And attractive investment incentives. It's taking me 6 months to get a top qualified PhD from Oxford, who is from Indonesia, had the top scholarship, to come to our lab in Slovakia and help educate the people around, because we can't get him visa on time because he's from Indonesia, so he must be like a terrorist or something, which is ridiculous. So that's just lying. And, most of these are not true, and we should stop. Like, first thing we should do is to stop lying to ourselves. So, I have a bunch of friends all over the globe, and some of them just said, like, okay, Miro, like, you should write a paper about this so we can all learn, like, about, like, what the hell is going on in that ecosystem. And with my colleague Jakub, we actually wrote a paper on, like, how we could try to build out the biotech, or, like, in this case, specifically synthetic biology ecosystem in Slovakia. And, we put in some proposed measures and how to build this from scratch. And I like to think, like about something that is easy to remember. So I talked about a traffic policy. So it's kind of a couple of things that should happen. So first of all, we need to teach key stakeholders about the importance of biotech sector, which they mostly don't understand. We need to remove the hurdles, right? And I'll speak about it. We need to attract the top talent, focus on key areas, foster entrepreneurship, invest into infrastructure, collaborate with the industry. Traffic. And when we get like a lot of traffic, we can hopefully get far. So easy to remember. So just teach key stakeholders about the importance of biotech. Right? This is from a couple of days ago, from roughly 10 days ago. When President Biden in the United States, where, by the way, they are by far the most ahead in this area, and where I had a chance to work with some of the key stakeholders, they just literally got a president to sign an executive order that said, like, let's put in a couple $2 billion into biomanufacturing and preparedness for the future pandemics and all these kind of things. And he might not be a biotech expert, but he understands, and he's got the stakeholders and kind of advisors who can tell him, hey, this is really important. So we need to go to like our prime ministers and healthcare ministers and I don't know, like all these agencies around and tell them like, guys, like, hey, this matters. Like, we can't just do cars, right? That's so 20th century. We need to do some other things as well, or we just need to diversify. It's just smart to diversify. So we need to remove hurdles. And there's a lot of hurdles. Like, I don't know, starting a company in the UK takes like 20 minutes and 2 days and costs 20 pounds. Getting a company registered here took me a month. It's crazy. Like, and try to open a bank account in Slovakia as a foreign company. That is ridiculous. It took me 2 days in the US. It took me 2 months in Slovakia. So there is a lot of these regulations. They're pretty ridiculous, and we can remove them kind of easily. We should attract the top people, and again, we should think about this a lot. Like, I'm not the top person in Slovak, like global Slovak in a biotech. They're smart people, right? They're like really a big shot, and this is just like some of the very famous companies, investment funds, institutions, where are Slovaks, right? Slovaks are in leading positions in all of these. Do you think that they are advising the Slovak government? Do you think that they are here and telling the prime minister, listen, son, this is what you're going to do because this is important? No. Nobody even knows about them, right? Which is ridiculous. And we need to change that. We need to attract the top people, and we need to start not kidding ourselves about like what the top people are. Like, in venture capital, there is a great thing about one thing, which is like you focus on the best, right? You take the best. Like, you give everything to the 1% top, and the rest you don't care. And that's how we should maybe search for the advisors. Like, bring them in, let them educate us, and not just on the science. That's very important. On a business side, on combining science and entrepreneurship, because this is what is really needed. And so we need to focus on key areas. We just need to be realistic, right? We are not going to be able to go and develop like totally novel drugs from like lead discovery and optimization to like phase 3 clinical trials. Like, we are not going to be able to do that. Like, typically this process takes $200 million. Like, all our like money in innovation that is meant to go to innovation from this recuperation plan is like $600 million. So like, we could take all of that and channel it into one company or two companies, and that would be it. And there's a still high risk of failure. So we should not do that, right? So what we can focus on is biomanufacturing, which would kind of also provide us some infrastructure. That's what my company tries to do, trying to working with like American Department of Health and like biotechnology research authorities to think about how we can diversify the infrastructure. Think about like computational biology, how we can use computation, how we can, use something that has lower operating and capital expenditures, and think about essential items like biosecurity and biosecurity policy, and what do we do for the future pandemics that will be engineered, because, we are on the eastern flank of NATO and enemy is not far. So, and we need to support entrepreneurship globally via Nucleate. We try to do this. The companies our network started have raised more than $170 million in venture funding, in private funding, not state funding. Nobody cares. Private funding, and there's like a bunch of students in the UK and US doing, right? So we can do much more. We need to support entrepreneurship. We need to support bold young ideas. And we need to invest in a key infrastructure, right? Like, we have a bunch of areas, but, again, try as a PhD student, just go somewhere and say, hey, I have some funding, I want to rent some lab space for 2 years, this amount, for this price, fix it. good luck with that. It's very, very difficult. There are some people who have been very generous, say, to my company with that, but that's not common. And this is a global problem. This is a problem in Oxford, in Cambridge, in Boston. They are building all the time. Trust me, I've been there 2 weeks ago. So this is actually something that we could utilize pretty well. We could provide the labs for rent. We could let people do the research and let people from outside come here. And, we need to collaborate with the industry. The reason why we got a vaccine for COVID so fast was that the private and public sector collaborated really closely. And we need to understand that it's like really the private capital that helps drive the innovation. Again, like imagine that states were doing drugs. That would be pretty bad. Like no state ever brought a drug to the market. It's maybe North Korea, right? But in normal world, it's really like the private companies. And we need to give them space to do that. So, and just to reiterate, we should aim to make Slovak biotech great because we can do it. We have smart people, we have some potential to do infrastructure, and we have some kind of manufacturing capabilities. We are used to work hard. This is all great. We just need to really think about it and be smart and improve these key aspects of major biotech ecosystem, from strong academia to a major biotech industry. So, with that being said, I will stop here. If you want to learn more and discuss more, please get in touch here, anywhere else, or just message me on any of these platforms. So with that being said, thank you very much. And I'm not sure if we have time for a question. If we do, I'm happy to answer any.